Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's half past, and being French, we're going to give everybody a little couple of minutes just to make sure that everyone has a chance to join and go over a couple of technical hurdles of the morning. So thank you for staying with us for a minute. I'll get silent. For those who are just joining, thank you very much for being with us. This is Eric speaking. We'll give another 1 minute for everybody to go over the morning technical hurdles to join the webinar, and we'll start very soon. Thank you for being patient with us. All right, this is the time. We got the quorum. So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us at this webinar on a very vibrant topic this morning, which is about all how to attract the best candidate possible and also how to keep them. And I'm sure that if you are with us this morning, it's because this is a topic that you either support or you either drive because of your role and function in your company. Thank you for being with us on that webinar with AKT Global and with Qualtrics. And we will have a very busy agenda, so I will not spend too much time to actually tell you about AKT. Though I think it's important that for those who don't know us, you have a quick glance on who we are, what we do, so that you understand the background of everything that we're going to share in terms of expertise and best practices. AKT has been for quite some time in the business of people, in the like of leading the digital HR movement in the EMEA market for the last 20 years. We've been engaged, and we are engaged with more than 150 active global customers, large corporation, high-tech startup, scale-up, and public sector. And we're very proud of the success we've been able to achieve with our customers from a technology perspective, but more important on a business perspective, and how we have helped those companies to transform the way they actually support their HR organizations. So you can see that we span over a number of countries, and we are quite unique in terms of our ability to actually go from advisory services to technology services, integration, and ongoing support. So we're doing everything on HR, and we're very much focusing on innovation, change, and value adoption with different type of service packages. To this morning, so that is who is AKT, and today with me, I have the luxury, I want to say, to have Shane Hickey, is asked. Shane is the head of the EX Solution Engineering for Qualtrics in EMEA. He's been with Qualtrics for quite some time, and he has an incredible expertise and experience on the specific domains. Shane today will actually play an active role on this webinar, helping us to see how the platform actually works and how it can help you in your job to understand about how better you're doing with candidate experience and how better you could do in terms of onboarding. So our agenda is very much about those two things. I will have a first 10-15 minutes to quickly share with you the current state of the challenges and benefits that customers see when it comes to candidate experience and onboarding. We will get then, as I said, into seeing a demonstration of the Qualtrics solution. The objective is by the end of this webinar, you have a clearer understanding of the opportunity for HR and HRIS to further improve on talent acquisition and talent development by focusing on those two aspects of employee experience. So hopefully that's going to be a good start, a great start of your morning, and we'll trigger a number of follow-up activities together after this webinar. So I talked about AKT, so you understand our practice in that domain. Want to have you understand why we have elected Qualtrics as a strategic partner of AKT. And it's very much because Qualtrics, as reported by Forrester and a number of other analysts, is being very much identified as the absolute leader, the ultimate leader when it comes to employee experience management platform for large enterprises. I will not go into the details, but you can see that amongst a fairly large group of companies, Qualtrics is coming very high on all those different capabilities and functions. And that is why we believe Qualtrics is by far the best platform for our customers to embrace and to run, to operate, to improve on all the different fields of employee experience. So why today are we specifically focusing on candidate experience and onboarding? Well, it's very much because we're hearing from our customers that hiring is becoming a more and more challenging activity for the company because of the trends on the market. And I'm always happy to share here a couple of quotes and data points to actually back up those anecdotal feedback we're getting from our customers. Here you can see and read Neil Carberry, Chief Executive of the Recruitment Employee Council of the UK, saying very, not so long time ago on April 8th, that they see a very much of a labor challenge. And the starting salary of permanent staff are growing at a record pace. You can see also that they're looking at having bigger and bigger problems with temporary workers, with blue collar, and in the hospitality sectors. And that is underpinning the ability of temps to seek higher rates. So, and that is very much what we're hearing from our customers, that hiring blue collars, people in the services organization is very much becoming a bigger and a bigger problem on a bigger competing market for all of them. And what goes for these type of workers go also for the white collars. So here you can see that from other sources of reports, and I can provide you the data point there, the challenges to actually go on higher white collars is only becoming bigger. Was 66% in the time, now is being over the 70%. So it's only becoming a bigger problem for everybody. So hiring is a challenge. So what will actually make any company stand out compared to the other companies who want to hire the same the same type of talents or the same type of people? Is very much the experience and the quality of the experience that is being proposed to those people who have now the choice between the different candidates, the different companies that they can go and work for. And as we all understand, and as we all know, that hiring is also a process that is supported by systems. our candidates, your candidates are also exposed to your hiring systems. And therefore, the quality of the experience very much depends on the quality of the experience with the people, your recruitment team, your recruitment partners, your hiring team, your hiring manager, but also is very much depending on the system that are being used, your ATS, because your candidates are being using them just say to actually post the application on your system, on your career portal. So it's becoming more and more important than ever. And the question is, how much do you know about their experience and how they feel about that experience? Likely you know about how the people you have hired feel about their experience at the time they were a candidate because you're asking them in a way. But how much do you know about the experience of the people you don't hire, either because they've been selected out during the process, either earlier or later? So let's look at that. Let's actually get into the shoes of the candidate and let's walk the hiring path. So let's look at John. And John potentially could actually go through these different stages that you can see at the bottom of the screen. It can be either at the investigation stage, is interested, at the application stage, when he's being screened, at the time he's being interviewed, at the time he's getting an offer. So you can see that sometimes it's good time, sometimes it's bad time. So first is finding an opportunity on LinkedIn or another career portal of the market, and he's quite happy about that. So he decides to actually proceed and actually go in the career portal. Well, it's interesting that a number of people actually stop there, and we will see with Shane about how to figure out about what is the experience at the time they decide to actually go and apply, and at the time that because the application is so difficult that they decided to stop the application because the career portal doesn't work for them. Then goes the time that they go into the screening, and how long does it take for them to actually being called back? How long does it take after the first screening interview to actually get some kind of feedback? How do they feel about that first touch? Is that personal? Do they feel engaged? Are they being engaged, or is that very impersonal? They get a case study. How do they feel of case study? How relevant is the case study to the job they're applying to? Sometimes they're being selected. They're quite happy about that. But then they go into the hiring interview cycles, and they get very different type of interviews with very different questions. It's not very consistent, the way the strategy is being exposed, and so on. And John is getting an offer, but actually he got offers from other companies. The experience, the feeling he got with the other hiring managers, with the rest of the process with these other companies is actually better. And although you have actually proceeded with John for quite some time, on the very last stage, actually John decided for another offer. So that's kind of, how do you know what is most important to you to get John, who is a brilliant candidate, to actually accept the offer and join the company? How do you know what is the biggest point to improve at the current stage, at the current moment on your company? And by the way, John may have accept the offer, but what we know is that there is a new things happening now, which is actually called ghosting. So what is ghosting is very much during that process, you're sending the case study and John decides to not answer. How come? Then John may decide to actually not show up at an interview. And even worse is actually I've signed the offer, but actually signed several offers. He decided not to come to this one, and he's not showing up on day one. I'm actually hearing from some company that they decide to actually over propose because they know in some countries, I'm not going to name the country, but it's very common that although they have 2 or 3 candidates who got an offer that's been signed, actually, it may be that 1/3 of the candidates will not show up on the day one. So ghosting is becoming a bigger problem. How do you know? So there are a few drivers to focus on that will help you understand where you can actually focus. So A is focusing on the stage. Another thing is to know what to focus on in the different stages. So the drivers of a good candidate experience are very much like technology. I spoke about that. The clarity, I understood what's happening to me. And why? The fairness, the attractiveness, the timeliness in the follow-ups, and the personalization. So those 6 drivers is very much coming out from the Qualtrics methodology. And we strongly believe that by focusing on the 6 drivers, this is a way to very much work on how to improve the candidate experience and making it more positive over the time. We spoke about potentially people not showing up. Now people are showing up, they are in the job. While they're getting in the job, there is always a question about, am I reaching the turning point where I need to decide whether I continue with that job or I need to change job? So managing the turnover is becoming more and more important, and specifically during the first year. It's actually proven by a number of statistics that after the first 6 months, the employees are pretty much decided whether they're going to stay with the company or not stay with the company. Some of them will be able to find another job within the next 6 months, meaning that leaving the company 12 months after they join, or they may stay a little bit longer, but they have already made their mind whether they're going to be fully engaged and stay for long or not. That's the kind of thing that you measure with your employee engagement, but that's also the kind of thing that you would like to measure before the employee engagement survey, the annual survey, so that you can actually potentially do something during, the first 3 months, the first 6 months before you reach that moment where the customers or the employee is deciding to stay or not. So there are a few things that you want to focus on in order to identify that, and potentially this is about the key elements of the onboarding experience. And we'll see that with Shane, that there are 4 main areas where you want to gauge how well the candidate is feeling about. One is, how do you feel about my relationship with my manager? How clear is my role compared to the role I was proposed? How well am I doing with the team, and how well the team is supporting me in my job? And how much effort on training, and what is the quality of the training that is being proposed, so I can make sure that I'm performing well in my job and potentially improving over time. So those are the 4 areas that will actually drive John to decide, yeah, absolutely, I want to stay in that job, or not, far from it, and actually I'm already considering going after a new one. So that was my short introduction to actually share with you statistics. Numbers show that actually hiring is becoming more and more difficult because of the market situation. When you hire the people, it's becoming even harder. It's becoming a big challenge to actually keep them, because there is so many opportunities on the market. And we believe that there are some very clear drivers to focus on, so that during the candidate stages and during the onboarding period, there is a way to actually assess and work on improvements to actually be better than the other companies. So with that said, let's go and see in the system how things are working out. And let me now share my screen, or give my screen to Shane, so that Shane can actually show us on the platform how things are going on.
Lovely, thank you, Eric.
So Shane, good morning. How are you doing today?
Not too bad, Eric. Yeah, all good.
Oh, good, great. Hey, Shane, so what are we seeing here?
So Eric, kind of just to recap on some of the things you've said previously, when we talk about John and the journey he goes through, what's absolutely critical for us is that as John goes through that journey, what we mean by that, the investigation, the application, the screening process, the interview, and hopefully all the way down to the offer stage, that we understand that experience that John is going through at those critical moments. And we measure those, and we understand what could be driving a good experience and what could be driving a poor experience. So what you can see here is, on each of those critical stages, we're getting a strong sense of what is the experience of that stage like.
Wow, I can see that. That's very telling. So obviously, some people would like to focus immediately on the things that are not doing so well. But I see that not only we can see things going well, not well, but there are different size of points of all the bubbles. So from your experience with the platform, what would you be focusing on at this stage when looking at that journey?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. So like every stage is critical, but what is so essential, like, is even your career portal. All of those candidates are coming to your career portal. You know, if they have a poor experience there, they won't even submit an application. So if they have a poor experience, you know, think of the cost of hire and all the different channels you can use. And your cheapest cost of hire in terms of getting candidates into the pipeline is from the career site. You know, the most expensive is when you're using agencies and headhunters. So even here on the investigation and the application stage, they're absolutely critical. And day in, day out, you just have to make sure that they're working to the best of their possibility. So I'd love to kind of just bring that to life and show you what that looks like, Eric, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, let's see. Let me jump over here now. So here's actually the Qualtrics career site. So you can see here, you know, we have all of our jobs, our applications, and so forth. And what we want to understand as individuals and people who we don't even know of as they're coming here, what's that experience like? So at all times we have over here to the left is a mechanism for individuals to give us that feedback, you know, and that feedback can be different. Maybe they want to know more about the company, they want to know a bit more about job opportunities in general, or maybe they're going through some sort of a technical issue, or they want to give feedback on the website. So at any stage, as someone may be suffering or something stopping them doing something, you know, they can come in here, they can tell us, look, I'm having an issue. Is the speed, the navigation, the content, etc. And there we can capture then in real time those issues that are being experienced and get them into the right hands. Second thing then is, as you start to think of those individuals, we go back to talk about John. You know, John is coming in here, John has seen a role he likes and said, okay, I'm going to apply for that role. So I'm going to fill out the details. Let's say solution engineer here in the Netherlands. John comes down, begins the application process, begins that process. You know, starts to fill out some of his details or my details, whatever, and gets so far and has something that blocks him, right? And gets a little frustrated, you know, and this is almost a candidate who's almost entered the pipeline, but decides for various either technical reasons or other reasons they've stopped. So they leave the career portal. You almost had them and they leave and they go to exit. As they go to exit, we'll try to catch them one last time and say, John, you know, what happened today? You know, why didn't you, complete that application? So when you look at the metrics you have behind your conversion rates, the amount of applicants who begin the journey of applying online but actually don't complete it, you so need to know why they're not completing. Now, some of those are justified. Some may have clicked apply by accident, or some just need to understand what I need to prepare to do that application properly. But then what you'll start to find, there can be a lot of technical issues. So their CV wouldn't load and so forth.
So Shane, I have a question. I know one of my customers told me that one of the problems is that it was taking far too long, and some of the candidates told them that it took them as long as 45 minutes. So if I would like to change the question there, is that possible with Qualtrics?
Oh, absolutely. It's all a point and click interface behind this. So that's what we find. So we talked about that methodology from Qualtrics and all the different experiences we measure along those, but as our customers then get used to that and begin using it, they will actually start to tweak the questions. They'll add in some extra ones and they'll deep dive in certain areas as they envisage problems that may come up to kind of get more information. So we always find that our customers end up getting towards this blended approach where they take all of the best practice content from us and then tailor it to suit their organization, their recruitment process, and so forth.
And I can see that the career site here was in English. If I was on the French career website, would I get the question in French or in English?
Oh, you can get in whatever languages you want. So no matter what languages you run your career site in, you should, in equivalent, have the surveys and the methods of feedback also in those languages too. And we can do that in over 70+ different languages.
Wonderful. So we've been focusing on the application stage. Are there some other things that you would like to show us now during the process?
Yeah, I think obviously as you start to collect all of that feedback, Eric, you want to make sense of it. And, you know, when all of these individuals, unknown individuals, are giving you that feedback, how do you make sense of it? How do you identify the problems that are being experienced? So let me kind of let's jump into a dashboard here. So we talked about the application phase here. So let's go deep into that and actually understand it. So what you will do is over time, you know, you start to monitor, you baseline it, and then you're starting looking for where sudden drop-offs and so forth. So we're starting to see suddenly there's something wrong with the technology that people are trying to use. So going back to those drivers,
it seems we had a new release in November that didn't really make it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. So very, very quickly, kind of going, what's the current issue we have? You know, obviously as well, you're trying to do things like why brought candidates here in the first place, but you know, we want to go straight down into the problem areas. So even from the verbatims alone, Qualtrics has a very advanced text analysis engine that can surface up not just the topics that people are talking about and what they talk about in all of those different native languages, but also the sentiment of that feedback. So when they give you that feedback, you know, is it positive or is it negative? You know, and in the case of application, in our example, if people are having issues, technical issues, we start to see there's a lot more on the negative side of that feedback. So what exactly are those issues? So, you know, very quickly you can start to understand, I'm trying to submit the application, but the button isn't actually working. I cannot submit my job application, etc. So, you know, my application goes missing, you know, and people are getting frustrated, and that frustration then is leading to individuals kind of going, this is a poor experience, it's not very good and reflective of the organization. Do you know what? I'm going to go and look elsewhere. So in this regard, what we need to be on top of, and we see in real time, when individuals are having issues like submitting an application, you know, we will know about that in real time, and we can get onto the IT team or whoever is responsible for the career portal to get it fixed straight away. Because ultimately, what we're trying to do is increase the size of that candidate pipeline. You know, we want to make sure that everyone who comes to the career portal with the intention of applying does apply, and secondly, that is a really good experience.
So I can see that we're having that for, you know, the entire group of candidates, but on the top of the screen, I can see that potentially I could filter that, right?
Of course, of course. So, you know, prime example, like you might look at it by a certain country, you know, you might look at it by type of roles are going for certain departments and so forth. So it doesn't have to be, oh, the submit button doesn't work for all jobs. We can kind of narrow it down to which particular job and function they're actually looking at.
Wonderful. So application seems that we have a few things to focus on. What are the other things on our candidate experience that we'd like to focus on now? Because we identify that there might be a problem.
Yeah, definitely. No. So apply, you know, we've just talked about. Screen is really critical then. Screen is that first human contact where you've submitted your application and you speak to someone for the first time. Generally, you know, it's a recruiter who is screening you. So that is an absolutely critical moment that we kind of also want to understand. So here we start to look at the screening process, and we ask about that experience in dealing with the recruiter or whoever it is that's representing your organization in the screening interview. And you know what we're trying to understand from the candidate then, were things timely? Was it personalized? You know, was there clarity for you and fairness and so forth? So we ask a handful of questions around that experience, because we know these are traditionally are the main drivers of a good experience during the screening process. But really what we want to then understand and make sense of statistically, which are the ones that are actually the most important, which are the ones that drive that experience the most at the screening stage. So when we talk about, you know, timeliness and clarity, we go a little bit more granular. So when we talk about timeliness, are we talking about, you know, the speed of the acknowledgement or the speed of actually getting that phone interview set up? When we talk about clarity, are you getting clarity on the next step for you in the process? Are you getting clarity for you about the role? Are you getting clarity for you about what your team is and what you be doing within that? And then statistically, we driver analysis to surface up, you know, how correlated it is to overall experience, and then how that experience itself is. So generally anything that becomes up here in the top left is sort of what we would classify as a red flag. So in this regard, and this is pretty common as well, what we're seeing is, individuals who are coming through the screening process, they have a good experience with the recruiter themselves on a personal level. They know what the next steps are in the process. They know, or they're experiencing that the recruiter is timely in all of their actions. But where it's falling down is when that candidate asks the recruiter, tell me a bit more about the role, tell me a bit more about the team I'm going to be working in and so forth. The recruiter's depth of knowledge isn't as strong. And suddenly that candidate is kind of going, right, I know the process, but it's not great because I don't know quite what I'm getting into here. The recruiter couldn't give me much more detail. So I'm a little bit nervous about really what the job entails and what I'll be doing, what my team is like and so forth. So keep on.
So I have
sorry, Gary.
So I have a question. Sorry, so I have a question. So all this feedback are getting from a survey that is being sent to candidates. How does it work?
So what happens is, as you go through in the ATS, you get marked off in stages. You've applied, you have your interview schedules, you're entering into the screening phase, the screening is completed. At that moment, straight after, we hear from the ATS, John has just completed the screening phase. Boom, the ATS tells Qualtrics, Qualtrics goes out and says, hey, John, we've just realized you've gone through the screening phase. Can you tell us a bit about that experience?
Lovely. So what else do we know about the application, about all the different stages? Any other thing that we can discover through the dashboard that you are providing?
Of course, look, in each of these phases, we do the same type of analysis. We go deep and so forth, but even we saw at the very start, our interview phase was quite down in terms of experience. And it's very clear as we go through the more sort of meatier interviews, timeliness is the absolute issue. And that is also the time when you start to understand, you have individuals who are going through it and it's like they're starting to withdraw from that experience and they're actually, pulling out of the process, even though you have invested a lot of time and so have they. So you really want to start to understand as individuals are actually withdrawing, what that actually looks like, why they're withdrawing. So we start to look at that then by all the different types of stages that candidate is in. Did they progress and what was their experience? Did you reject them? What was the experience like for them? Or do you actually look at those that withdrew? The ones that you thought were good, but they have excused themselves from the process and you're trying to understand why that is. And here, what we're finding is when you get into the more meatier interview stages, candidates are struggling with the time between the interviews, the response time, the follow-ups and all of that, even the interviews themselves starting and finishing on time. So they excuse themselves. So now we are starting to understand why they're excusing themselves.
So what is interesting for everybody to understand is that at this stage, you can see these dashboards that can be very valuable, obviously for the recruitment team, but also how the recruitment team can actually share this feedback with the different hiring managers. So there will be with Qualtrics Candidate Experience 2 different streams of data coming. The one is coming from the candidates, the other one is coming from the hiring manager. And here what we will have is an opportunity to go back to the hiring manager and say, we hear your feedback, but please listen to the feedback from the candidates about their experience for your department, for your country, when they be going through the round of interviews. On what is helping you to actually, keep having the best candidate excited, engaged, to actually follow through and get to the offering stage. So that is, a very action-oriented set of data points coming back from this dashboard that you can go share with your hiring manager and the recruitment team for them to know what to focus on to get the best candidates engaged on positively, closing for the job being offered. Great. So Shane, so we've seen candidate experience. So anything you want to actually share on top of what we have already seen in candidate experience before we get into onboarding?
No, I think let's that's quite a bit of information there, and there's a lot of good stuff to kind of even talk about with onboarding as well, Eric. So let's
So
let's look at
perhaps one thing I would like to highlight is if you look on the left side, you may think, and you've seen Shane actually, clicking on stage 1, stage 2, stage 4. You see quite a few tabs here that you can actually configure whether you want to show them or not show them, depending who is actually connecting to the dashboard. You can see that you have things about the recruiter effectiveness that is actually helping to understand how the recruitment team is doing. And you see something calling the X-Flow. And I think that's an important element, because the X-Flow is the way to actually drive action from those insights, some feedback, some of the things that you've seen at the dashboard. So say you have suddenly a drop on a specific number and you want to alert a specific group of people. The X-Flow will be the automated engine, the automation engine that will help you make that happen. And those automation can drive messages by email, but can also post on Teams, which means that you can really reach out to the specific people or the specific group of people in an automated way, so that you don't have to actually have the entire population keeping on coming to these dashboards all the day, but be informed that they have to, because something specific is happening in the process of hiring. So that's how under the skin Qualtrics can be when it comes to hiring. So now, Shane, thanks to your help, thanks to Qualtrics, we've done a great job at hiring great people. I would like to make sure that once those great people are being hired, we're going to keep them. And that was the promise for this webinar. So hiring the best, and now we know how to make sure we actually be the best hiring teams all together at the company level. How can I make sure that I'm going to be able to understand how we're doing with onboarding, and how we make sure that we are, going beyond expectation of the new employees, so that they stay for long and for good of the company?
Yeah, definitely, Eric. When you look at the cost of hiring and even the time to hire, and then those individuals you do hire, is absolutely critical. You make sure that their onboarding experience and their initial experience of the organization is extremely positive, because to lose them soon after you bring them in and onboard them, it is such a huge impact to the organization. So when we look at onboarding, we kind of look at it from 4 different main areas or pillars. What's the experience like of your manager in terms of the communication, talking to you about your career, the role itself, the clarity on the role, how you're set up for that role, the team, which we kind of talked about earlier. We carry that in from the candidate side. So the environment you're going into, who your teammates are, how you collaborate, and so forth. And the final, the kind of the more obvious one with onboarding as well, the training that you actually receive. Is that fit for purpose? Is it setting you up for success? Is it setting you up for independence to be able to go and do your job? So they're the 4 main areas we start to look at across all of these candidates we bring in.
So absolutely. So I can see that on the dashboard, we can see Q1, Q3, Q4. So what is pretty cool here is that you're giving me a take or a conclusion, a summary of how we're performing on onboarding overall, quarter over quarter. Obviously, the system will send automatically those survey to the new onboardee, say a week after they join, a month after they join, 3 months after they join. But also you can configure the system to do it 136, 139, 149, depending your company rules, but also potentially within your company, depending the type of contract, depending the type of countries, depending the seniority in the job. So all this is configurable so that as part of the life cycle, it's very much context and role sensitive to actually get feedback from the people being onboarding. So now, yeah. Shane, again, I know all the managers would go straight on the drivers on the left manager, because this is 75%, so that's the lower performance. But actually, I know for a fact that role is super important in order to keep the best people in the company. So how are we doing with role?
Sure, yeah. So we go into role here. we start to break that down and we start to understand, you know, the different aspects of the role, you know, the understanding your responsibilities. Is there continuity from the candidate side in terms of the description? And you find it sort of interesting and challenging. And then, you know, what we're trying to understand is that if you start to think of all of the different individuals you bring in for all the different job functions and their age profiles, their location, the levels they're coming in at, you're trying to find like where the ones that are having like the biggest gaps. You know, so what we can do then with like heat maps is start to figure out, by looking at all of that information that's coming over from the HRS, how this is starting to look by country, say, or starting to look by level, you know, and you're looking for those individuals. So we can kind of start to see here, senior managers and leaders. You know, our onboarding program is very good for our day-to-day individual contributors all the way up to mid-managers, but with senior managers and leaders, just this gap, right? And senior managers and leaders, they're so hard to find. They really are. So that where we need to start to focus and actually improve the onboarding experience for them in this regard.
Nice. So, you know, there's a lot of data here. How do I know where to focus?
Yeah, where to focus, you know, is if you actually maybe even take a bit of a step back, and we kind of like say, you have so much data here, right? You start to look at all the different demographics you hold about your new employees, department, are they customer facing, their work location, so forth. Here's an amazing way that we can just plot that all out, and essentially how you look for those outliers. Who are the ones, you know, that are sort of more on the extreme side, having a poor experience. So when we look at department, you know, when you're onboarding through marketing, you know, satisfaction is 89%, with HR and IT is about 90%. Levels, etc. So we get down here, we can say very specifically Australia, right? It's at 77%, so it's way down. So as the individuals onboarding in Australia, there's definitely something where it's not as great as the rest of the organization. So that's when you do want to kind of, let's drill down into Australia. Now we start to look at Australia, where or what type of employee in Australia, so we can start to see it's, you know, sales is not great, and those that are customer facing, surprise, surprise, the kind of same attributes. So we've very quickly narrowed down, we need to start looking at sales and how we improve that onboarding experience. And again,
so can I have a dream chain? So now you're helping, you know, Qualtrics helping me to actually spot me quite quickly, you know, where I should be focusing on, because, you know, what kind of population. I'm not a data scientist, so that is helping me a lot. Is there any kind of AI or any kind of recommendation engine that will help me understand, now that I know where to focus, what to do?
100%. So like we're looking at the onboarding experience for us Australian employees, and we've already established, look, we want to understand the manager, the role, the team, and the training. So behind the scenes, what the platform does then, it analyzes and runs all these correlations to determine surface up for these Australian employees. The biggest opportunity statistically to improving that onboarding experience is making sure their manager is more effective at resolving work issues. And your second biggest opportunity is ensuring the managers are having useful career conversations, right? So straight away, this is statistics. So we might have seen role not being great, but statistically, these are actually the two areas you should focus on.
So with that kind of tool, what we can see is that we could actually make this dashboard quite pervasive across the different manager lines, because, you know, obviously it's always great to have an HR business partner who can actually read these dashboards and have a discussion with the manager. You would like that to happen, but, you know, you cannot potentially, you may not be able to spread over all the different management lines and all over the regions and departments and so on. That is so many, there are so many. So with that type of approach, thanks to Qualtrics, you'd be able to actually go teach the manager how to, you know, just access this dashboard, and those managers could actually have a handy dashboard that would tell them how they proceed, how they are doing, and where to focus on, right?
Very much so. And even, you know, we talked about onboarding for Australian employees, and we said we look managers. It does, you know, some managers would be very good at this. So we actually just need to work with the ones that are not. We don't have to take all the managers out and give them more training. So we start to look in Australia, and again, which managers are effective and which are not. So we can suddenly identify those individuals, because for every candidate, a new hire that comes in, we know who their associated manager is. So we can very quickly start to see who are those individuals. We kind of saying, right, let's do a little workshop with these 3 individuals to improve those career conversations and helping with work-related issues. So we get really down into the nitty-gritty, rather than saying, oh, let's have massive training for all managers. No, let's just focus on the ones that need help, and let the ones that are doing it, like Anna here or James, continue what they're doing. We don't distract them from their day-to-day.
And what is pretty cool is that if I could also push the system in a way that now that I've identified the people that I would like to bring into discussion, I could decide that that is an action plan, and I could actually load that action plan in Qualtrics, even have an ID board and have a discussion with these managers about how we could do a better job at resolving faster the issues for the new employees. Have the ideas, because perhaps they are badly ranked by the employees, but themselves are facing challenges to help the employees and help the onboarding. So having an ID board, and you can see on the top of the screen that there is an area there in Qualtrics where you can actually, just spearhead an ID board, have a discussion live with those managers, have them to actually stack rank where they need help, where you can support them. And obviously, all that is being loaded in Qualtrics, and therefore HR on any other organization can look about what are the actions that are being taken, and when those actions are being delivered, then to see if there is actually an improvement on those different key drivers to actually get the onboarding staying for long and for good with the company. That's awesome. So
yeah, Eric,
any other thing
I just want to reiterate on that. I'll just reiterate that as well very quickly. This is about a mechanism to help managers. It's not about a mechanism to kind of point flaws. So by exactly you're saying, these managers will have challenge, and they'll be able to also explain where they may have been struggling and why they've been struggling. So we use this as a proactive mechanism to identify and help the managers, rather than to be pointing fingers.
Yeah, so can you go back to the main screen of onboarding so that we can the headlines. So as you can see, we have identified for onboarding the 4 main drivers, from the manager to the role, the team, and the training. And the training is also a very important element. So as much as candidate is for the hiring team and the hiring manager, here you can see that Qualtrics Lifecycle, specifically focusing on onboarding, is a platform that will help to increase the onboarding success, but it will help who? It will help the HR team in HR. It will help organization development. It will help the people in charge of training. It will help the line managers. So it's very much a tool that can actually be a platform that can be actually configured to actually support many organizations that contributes to the success of your onboarding program. So let me actually, if you don't mind, take the screen back so that if you give it back to me. And in this way, hello?
Yeah, so Eric, you have that now?
I have that now. No, can you make me the presenter, please? Or Estelle, can you make me the presenter?
There you go, Eric.
Thank you. So you shall see my screen, right?
Yeah, back up again.
Yeah. So what we've seen, and now we're getting into not only a wrap up, so please stay with us, because I'm going to share a few data points that I believe will be interesting in order to understand what is the business case behind candidate experience and onboarding. But before I get into that, I want to share with you that as a wrap up, what you've seen is very much a subset of the Qualtrics employee experience platform. First, you have seen that with Qualtrics, the Qualtrics platform, we obviously have a way to listen and remember the feedback of either the candidates or from the employees. And we say listen, which is a way to say that Qualtrics is by no means a survey machine. You have seen by going to the candidate experience on the career portal that there are many ways to go and listen to the people at the right time in their context. Obviously, that goes well if you can actually have access to data of who are your candidates, if you can have access on the data about who are your employees. And because of the neat native integration with different HRIS system and specifically with SAP SuccessFactors, you can integrate Qualtrics directly with SuccessFactors recruitment or with SuccessFactors Employee Central or Employee Profile. And that means that all the data hustle is over, managed natively automatically. So that then we can process and understand, which is the pillar of the middle, which is IQ. And you've seen that that is much more than just a reporting machine. It's a lot of dashboards that are predefined. There's a lot of advanced statistics into that. There is a lot of artificial intelligence. There is word clustering, word sentiment analysis, a lot of things that will help you to actually manage a larger flow of data coming at you as you deploy those systems. And last, I mentioned that you have an automated workflow engine into that platform that will help you to integrate with either SuccessFactors back again, or integrate it with Microsoft Teams, or integrate that with other systems, which make it a very action-oriented platform. So it's actually, included that with integration on onboarding, integration with recruitment, a lot of different integration are available out of the box to support different type of activities. We have been focusing in the middle on the employee life cycle, specifically on candidate experience, on onboarding and training, but you can see that you can actually keep with the same mechanism over the different moment in the life of the employees. Obviously, all those things should actually flow nicely with what you may be already doing, which is the annual engagement on the Pulse. If you would be doing that with Qualtrics, you would have the means with dashboard and analytics of Qualtrics to relate how well you're doing with onboarding and how that help to actually get a better level of employee engagement. We have actually analytics that shows how to correlate the level of employee engagement with the type of onboarding of candidate experience on onboarding that they had. And obviously, you can expand that to other mechanisms related to the 360, the 180 on ad hoc research. So, couple of recs, couple of rotten and experience. So very important to understand that you've been working super hard with the ATS, with your HRIS to actually streamline the process in HR, streamline your hiring process, streamline your onboarding process, streamline all your HR process so that HR being more efficient, being able to deal with more regions, more departments, more people. That's business performance, but we think that it's all about people being people-centric. So it's super important that you understand that with Qualtrics, we can focus on those 3 points that are on the right here. Okay, and that's very much what we are actually looking about, how to automate and how to develop, but also put right at the center all the cognitive science, all the people science, so that we can make sure that we are very much taking care of what the people think, how the people feel, and how we can relate to that in the interaction we're having with them. So, but it's still business performance. So a few numbers. And we were in a few mats with a few customers. And I'm taking just the example of someone who would actually poorly manage the candidate experience. Take that the hiring plan is 200 people. So if you look about the cost of that, Shane said it costs quite a bit of money. You could look at, what is the hiring plan cost, taking the average salary for your 200 people you're going to hire, take 15% of their annual salary, and you're likely to come close to what is the hiring plan cost. Maybe 10%, maybe 20%, depending your industry. That's quite a bit of money. To get to 200 people, you're certainly going to have 2,000 of candidate applications that are reasonably good. Some people get even, 10x more, 10x of the 2,000, so even much bigger number of candidate applications, but a lot of them not being qualified. But that is actually driving to a lot of people that may not cut it to actually through the candidate application and not even go through that. And there are a number of data that are showing that the number of candidates reporting having a bad experience is pretty high, can go as high as 1,200 if you have 2,000 candidate application. And that's great, and 70% of them would be detractors. So perhaps some numbers you want to catch there and apply to your own environment to think about, when you have to hire 200 people, how many detractors are you creating? How is that going to impact your employer brand? And because you're creating so many people having a bad perception in your talent pool because the detractors speak to so many other people, that is having a major impact. So a few numbers perhaps you want to run in your environment to think about, how much feedback you're getting from the shortlisted people that you are not going to hire, and how many hires, how many hires you've been able to do from your existing talent pool. That will also say how well you're managing your talent pool, meaning how well you're managing your candidates. So a few numbers to consider. Another one would be on the onboarding. And again, I'm not going to run through the numbers here. You can have access to them. We can have that session with you. They may be high, they may be low, but it's definitely, from our experience with customers, a pretty high number when you are poorly managing the onboarding. The result of having a pretty high turnover in the first year because of the non-productive time actually turns to be a fairly high business impact to the company. So again, interesting numbers to look at, to apply in your company, to tweak, configure in your company, but will make the case for why you want to actually, go one step further in terms of understanding how well you're doing on your onboarding and how better you could do it. So in conclusion, hopefully you get a taste now on how Qualtrics can help on the technology, on the best practices, very important, on technology and on the best practices to improve the candidate and the new employee experience. Just to want to make it very concrete, AKT Global, because of our certification, accreditation, and experience at implementing this technology with Qualtrics, can now actually commit to deliver a 12 weeks to first benefits, 12 weeks to first value, and we can also help you size what would be the limited involvement of your IS and HR resources. It's pretty light, it's not a big project, and the benefits are pretty important and quick, as you may have been able to see. So together, we'd like to actually share with you that, I'd like first to thank Shane for spending the time with us and giving us a tour of what we could actually get from candidate and onboarding experience. Thank you, Shane. And thank you to all of you for attending that session. And hopefully that will drive an appetite for us together to meet soon, assess your current state, and look at what could be the opportunity for you to leverage these different type of technology and best practices provided by Qualtrics and AKT Global. So thank you very much to all of you. We will reach out to you to get your feedback, to get your questions. So please list them down so we can answer to them live in our next face-to-face. Thank you very much and have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to our webinar about candidate and onboarding experience. Hopefully, you are all with us this morning. Let's give it another couple of minutes to make sure that everybody has a chance to join. Again, the webinar will start soon. We just want to give everybody a chance to join. So let's make sure we give them 1 or 2 more minutes. Good morning, everybody. So welcome to this webinar. So we are actually doing this webinar 2 times today to make sure we can accommodate everybody time zone. So for those who are joining us now, welcome. This is about how to attract the best and keep them. Before we run straight into the matter, we'd like to actually give you a short introduction about who we are and what kind of return on experience we have on those different elements. So for those who don't know AKT, AKT is a fairly large company across EMEA, very much specialized on people cloud. We've been for more than 20 years in that business, and we are a proud supplier of more than 150 global customers. Some of them are large corporation, high-tech, startup, and public sectors. We are very much a key partner of SuccessFactors, and we are a certified and accredited partner for Qualtrics. We actually spanning over 8 countries. We have local advisory, central delivery, which enable us to advise and consult our customers on the entire life cycle of their programs. So 3 things we'd like to actually call out in what we do. We are very innovative, and we've been actually getting the award of the best global SuccessFactors innovative partner last year. We're focusing on change, driving fairly large program across EMEA, and we're focusing on value, which means that not only we help customers to actually spearhead some of their programs, but we're also helping them to make sure that they gain the sustain and the optimize approach to get the best value from the software and the services they have acquired. So on that webinar, I'm happy to introduce myself, Erin Bloom, managing partner here at AKT Global, but I also have the luxury to have Shane Hickey, our head of our EX solution here at Qualtrics. Shane has been in the field of employee experience and Qualtrics for quite some years, and he has an incredible expertise and experience in that domain. So thank you very much, Shane, for being with us today. The webinar agenda will be focusing, as I said, on candidate experience and onboarding. I will actually share with you a few data points about the market situation and the trends and what we believe it's a very hot topic right now for most of our customers, and certainly for you if you are on that webinar. And at the end of the presentation, I will also share with you some business benefits that you can expect from the solution, on a few data, a few ideas about how to work on a business case if you would like to embark on that journey and need one to present to your investment committee. The key part of the webinar will be about the Qualtrics solution and demonstration, and Shane will be there for us on that. At the end, we hope that you will have a clear understanding of the opportunity with HR and HRIS to further improve on talent acquisition and talent development. So, why Qualtrics? Why is AKT so fond of Qualtrics? Well, because of the success we have with our customers, but also because when we read a number of analyst reports, such as the Forrester New Wave, well, we can see that the market is very much in agreement that Qualtrics is by far the ultimate and the best platform to actually do that. And that on the entire EX management platform landscape, you can see that there are many contenders, but Qualtrics really, is up on the map. And that makes us very confident that when we recommend Qualtrics to our customers, we recommend them for a very solid long-term investment. So, why candidate experience and onboarding is the topic of now? Well, just looking at feedback from different, people who really look at the market seriously. Here, I'm actually quoting Neil Carberry, who is the chief executive of the Recruitment Employment Council in the UK, and not so long time ago, on April 8th. Neil was actually calling out that the labor market is going into a very specific time, that the salaries for permanent staff is going sky high, and that is specifically true and hard for the temporary workers, for the blue collars, and specifically in the hospitality sector and the service sector. And that is no different. That's just another confirmation to all the things that we're hearing from our customers across Europe. Sorry. So, it is a problem because candidates have choices, because there are more and more of a competition between the different employers, because in order to get the good or the best employees, it's going to cost much more, and you want to make sure that when you do that, you are being very efficient and best in the way you engage with the people. And what is true is blue collars, hospitality sector, services sectors is also true for the white collars. So you can see here the growing challenge to hire white collars was in Europe 66%, is now over 70%, and there is no indication that that's going to actually get loose. It's going to be harder and harder to hire great white collars, great knowledge workers to really join your either sales organization, your finance organization, or any engineering, product development type organization, marketing. So, hiring will be all about experience. So the quality of experience will stand in how you interact with those different candidates. And when I say you interact, it's actually quite a few people. If you think about how many people in your organization are involved in talking with candidates, it can be between 3 to 6 people. So how do you know, how confident are you that for every candidate, there is the right level of experience, the right level of consistency in the touch, in the content, in the material that are being shared by the recruitment team, by the hiring managers, on any other people involved in the hiring process. And what goes for the people touch, go for the tech touch. So think about how much more interaction your candidates will have with your systems. It can go to your career portal to look at the job description, to your career portal for the job application. It can go to any other, say, the DocuSign when it comes to actually sign the contract, the offer. It can go to the online assessment. There are so many systems that may be on the way of the candidate that you may want to make sure that they're having great experience then too. How do you know? So many people, many systems, it's all getting into the way that, you know, what is your company looking like to the candidates, and that will be likely either attracting or refraining from good or best candidates to actually join. So what is the journey like? So here we're trying just to make it simple. All right, so you have John here, and we try to be in his shoes from the early stage, investigate, the application stage, the screening stage, the interview stage, the offering stage. So here you can see that, you know, he's finding a job on LinkedIn. That's easy, that's good. But then it's going in the career portal, and it takes more than 15 minutes. I actually have a customer reckon that sometimes it takes up to 45 minutes. And by the way, when they look at, you know, how the resume is being automatically translated into their form, it's actually, you know, really not great. You get to the first automated feedback only comes 3 weeks later. So people are like, why so long? And then the first touch with the recruitment team is quite impersonal, just because the recruitment team has been outsourced, or because they have so many people to actually screen at the time, or because they've not been trained in a way to make it a little bit more personal with the right script. Then the online assessment or the case study is being weird and not being very much, you know, aligned with the job context. But anyway, John surviving to all of that is because he liked the company, he liked the vision. John selected, but then he's going through the hiring interviews, and then he's speaking to 4 different people, and it comes very, you know, different, very heterogeneous. He's wondering whether, you know, the company is having its act together. But anyway, he's going through it because he likes his hiring manager more than anything. And then he's going to the offer, but at that time it's taken so long that he's having another offer anyway, and he's deciding to go for the other offer just because the experience was better, perhaps not because of the salary, perhaps not because of the benefits, just because all along the way his representation at the camp of the other company has become much better than yours. So all that for that, and we know that it takes a long way to actually get there and it costs a lot of money. But not only that, we also see from our customers the development of a new threat, and it is called ghosting. So what is ghosting, for those who don't quite see what I mean by that? It's very much for people like, you know, I've been through investigate, apply, and screen, I'm sending the case study to the candidate, and actually they don't answer. So I got them through, I had the screening interview, I send them the online assessment of the case study, and they suddenly don't answer. They're getting like missing in action. Or later stage, they do that, but then they go into the interview, they do interview 1, 2, and they don't show up to interview number 3. How comes? What happened? And even worse, they actually, you know, get the offer, they sign the offer, we're waiting for them on May 1st, and nobody's coming up, nobody's showing up. Then everyone is waiting for John. John is not coming up. So that's kind of what ghosting is about, and we see more and more of that, or we hear more and more of that, and that's a very big problem for the companies. So how can we make it better? So we're very keen, very grateful that Qualtrics is not only providing us with the technology, but Qualtrics is also providing us with a number of methodology on candidate experience. Qualtrics is actually providing us with a list of drivers that are believed to actually help to drive to a much more positive candidate experience. What are they? It's about technology, and I spoke about it. It's about clarity. It's about fairness. It's about attractiveness. Timeliness, spoke about that. Personalization, spoke about that. So we believe, and Qualtrics actually has research-back elements to say, if you want to improve the candidate experience, very much focus on those 6 things. So now you're like, okay, I get that, but you know, I have so many departments, potentially so many countries, so many hiring managers, so many recruiters, and obviously so many candidates. How do I actually know how we are doing on technology, clarity, fairness, timeliness, personalization? How do I know that? So that's the question we will hopefully answer during the demonstration with Shane. John is in the company. He's been in the company for a bit, say 3 to 6 months. He's actually at 6 months point that John will decide consciously or unconsciously whether he will be a long-term employee thriving for outperforming his objectives and being a great teammate, or actually just doing his job and actually starting to be listening to the market, as we like to say, or potentially being actively looking for another job. 6 months term is very much when that conscious or unconscious decision is being made. So onboarding is a very key moment. And we look at that as, okay, it's a very key moment because in that market where turnover is only growing up, where attrition is only going bigger, it's a very key thing for a company. So when we look at onboarding as a defining moment, what are we speaking about? It's very much about, is the experience of John up to the expectation that he made himself up or that he got while having all those meetings during this interview process? So he's looking at, how am I being empowered to do my job? What kind of training do I get? Am I confident with my team? Is the job up to the job? Is my job activities up to my job description? So it's kind of things. So you remember I spoke about 6 drivers to improve the candidate experience. Let's look about what are the drivers to actually thrive with onboarding. So there are 4 main drivers. One is about the manager, one is about the role, one is about the team, and one is about training. And obviously, there are quite a few things behind each of those drivers. And that's what we're going to look at with Shane during the demonstration. So let me now change presenter and make sure that we give Shane a chance to show up and share his screen and show us how it goes with the platform. So Shane, welcome to this webinar. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for sharing what I believe is the dashboard of Qualtrics. We're straight into the platform, correct?
This is it indeed, yes, very much so. So this is kind of the landing site when we start to really understand the candidate experience across all of those phases you mentioned that John was going through. The investigation, where they're looking for a job, the application as they actually go through that submission on the career portal, the screening, as they maybe talk to a recruiter through screening, down to the interview process, and then hopefully they get to the offer stage.
Right. So we can see the different stages. Obviously, all managers would like to go straight to interview, which seems to be a low light, but we understand that there are size of bubbles. So it seems that we have a lot of feedback from the application stage. Is there anything that I'm hearing also from different sources that application, has had some high and some low. So can you tell me how we're doing with application right now?
Yeah, of course. What it might even be worth to have a quick look at it as well, Eric, is just how do we even get this feedback? Because when you think of the investigation and the application phase, these individuals, we don't know them yet. They haven't actually submitted an application. So how do we measure their experience when we don't even know who they are? So that's a good way. Maybe we could just
you're right. Actually, yeah. How do we collect that feedback? How do we listen to them?
Yeah, sure. So let me show you. 1 second now. Oh, apologies. Where are we going? Let me just. So here we have the Qualtrics career portal. All right. So this is like where individuals are coming on, they're browsing jobs and so forth. And as they're browsing, they're investigating and so forth. At any stage, they have an opportunity to give us feedback. So as they experience something, or if they find that something is missing, they want to know more about Qualtrics, they want to know more about our products, or they're actually going through an application or thinking about going through an application and they're experiencing some sort of an issue with the website. So at any moment, we're allowing those unknown individuals to let us know what that experience is like as they go through the investigation, as maybe they're reporting a technical issue. What exactly is that technical issue? You know, is it the speed or is it the actual content? You know, describe all that to us. So as these individuals are here, you know, we have that mechanism at any time, which is always on for those potential candidates to actually let us know how things are going, where there's issues, where there's blockers, and so forth. Because if we improve that experience, we know those individuals, if they go through a good investigation phase and they're getting a good feeling and sense, and they find the information they're looking for, they start to go into the application mode. So what I mean by that then is, as you're on the site, you know, you're starting to look at jobs and roles and kind of going, right, I'm going to begin that journey. I'm going to go and enter the journey of doing an application. So as those potential candidates now enter that funnel of an application, you know, we talked about John. John is here, he's filling out these details, yeah, et cetera, and something happens. You know, either it's not working or they're missing something and so forth. You know, and that's that critical moment where you almost have gotten the application, but it drops off for some reason. You know, so we have a lot of customers that look at kind of conversion metrics. How many people are starting an application compared to how many people are completing an application? And really, in the ideal situation is, you know, it's 100%. You get everyone who starts, completes more often, but that never happens in reality. So as someone like John almost completes the application, but decides to leave, you really want to understand what was wrong, what was wrong with that experience, what happened. So as individuals leave the career portal, you kind of say, oh, just 1-2 quick questions before you go. Can you let us know why you didn't complete the application? And sometimes there's genuine reasons, you know, they clicked apply by accident, or they just needed to know more information about what they had to prepare to do the application. But other times there could be technical issues. The submit button's not working, the CV wouldn't upload, and so forth, right? And they're the critical red flags. You kind of going, if you know, if these issues are here, they're happening for lots of people, we need to fix this straight away.
Right, amazing. And by the way, you know, just a quick one. So those questions are coming from the best practice at Qualtrics, but what if I would like to have a different one? Like, you know, tell us what was the, how long does it take to actually fill the form?
Oh yeah, very much so. So with Qualtrics, you get best practice methodology, but the platform itself is a really intuitive point and click interface. So what we actually find is customers start to use our best practice and then tweak it and adjust it to reflect either what they want to understand more or to dig into certain areas that they feel are going to be problematic. So ultimately, we'll find our customers end up sort of personalizing the solution and the questions they ask about. So if you get a sense, you know, or getting sort of in anecdotal feedback saying, oh, you know, is the application process taking too long? It's very, very easy to put in a question saying, you know, please tell us about the duration or the time it took you to complete the application. You know, is it acceptable? Is it not acceptable? So very much so, Eric, it's very easy to personalize and kind of dig deep in those topic areas you want to.
And also we're hiring all over the world. So if my career portal is in 5 languages, what will happen with that, you know, listening feedback mechanism?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you have to ask the questions in the language of the applicant and your career portal, right? There's no point in putting up a survey in English if your applicants are on the German version of the career portal and only, you know, communicate in German. So on our side, we would match all of the languages you have on your career portal. We can do over 70 plus different languages, so that's absolutely fine. It's imperative, you know, that you ask questions in the language that the candidates are comfortable communicating in.
Very good. So now that we've been able to ask for feedback, and obviously this is at the current stage, but you know, we could ask also by, you know, surveys, then by email at a later stage. So now, what do we do with all this feedback? Because that's going to be kind of like volume of feedback at some moment.
Yeah, very much. So if you think of the application phase that we just talked about, you know, if there was technical issues, like what does that look like? How do you understand what those issues are? So In here, then we start to look at what we call stage 2, the application stage or the apply stage. You know, and what you're trying to get a sense of, because you collect this day in, day out, continuously and automatically, it just happens in the background, you'll get a strong sense of your baseline. And then what you start to see over time is if there's any sudden drops or, you know, decline in the experiences, you really want to dig into and start to understand. So here we can see there's a sudden decline. And then we start to look at that feedback from just the application phase. You know, obviously why candidates apply, we ask about that at times, but we can go straight down into even some of the verbatims. So with Qualtrics, we have an extremely advanced text analytics engine. And what that actually does is it can categorize and surface up sort of the main topics that individuals are talking about in their native language. And as well as that, you know, it can sort of categorize the sentiment of those topics. So when people talk about these things, did he talk about it in a positive light or a negative light? So sometimes in a positive light, people might say, oh, you know, I love the company, the career site's been super smooth and super easy to use. Other times the negative things, you know, I'm having an issue. So in here, in this regard, you know, we're seeing people having a technical issue. When you get into that, so what exactly were they saying when they had a technical issue? And they're saying, look, with regards to application, the submission itself is not working. I cannot do a job submission right. So getting all the way down, and the submit button itself is not working. You know, every time I press the submit button, my response is deleted. So that critical moment, you know, we're hearing about that in real time. We're categorizing all of those verbatims, and then we can surface up here the actual technical issues as they're happening.
Amazing. Okay, so we've seen that. So if we look at the, what is interesting is that when we were on the application stage, we could see a drop specifically in at some stage, and it could tell that something happened when we released a new version of it. So when we look at those different stages, we look at the application stage. Is that the same panel for every stage, or there is a different set of drivers that you would like depending the stage?
Oh, each stage has a sort of a unique or dedicated set of questions that are very relevant to that stage. So when we talk about maybe the screen stage, the next stage, so John has submitted his application. He gets scheduled then with a recruiter screening type of interview. You know, in there then what we are trying to understand is, you know, the timeliness of the recruiter, the personalization, the clarity, the fairness of that stage with the recruiter and the screening interview. So we ask very pointed and specific questions around that experience. And what's absolutely critical then is for those individuals who have gotten to the screening stage, how was that experience? So we ask those questions to gather that feedback. But how then do we make sense of all of that feedback? You know, what is the most critical thing? What's the most important thing to drive and improve that experience? So here what we have is our key driver analysis. So when we start to talk about timeliness, you know, we're talking about the setup of the interview. We're talking about how quickly we got back to the individual. When we talk about clarity, we kind of focus on 3 areas. Clarity in terms of the process and knowing the next steps, clarity in terms of knowing the role and what the job function is, and clarity around your team, what you'd be working in, the environment you'd be working in, how you'd be working with that team, and so forth. And what we do and visualize here then with a key driver analysis is surfacing up exactly the most problematic area that has the highest correlation to that experience. So what we have up generally in the top left then are areas that are strongly correlated to the screening experience, and then how you're performing in that. So what we see here is actually, it's a pretty common one as well, we've seen with some customers, is that when you have a screening interview and it's being conducted by a recruiter, you know, the recruiter knows the process, they know everything, the next steps, and their day-to-day is, you know, following up with these potential candidates and so forth. So timeliness is something they're very good at. But more often than not, what we see is as the candidates talk to the recruiter and want to understand more information about the role and the team they're going to be working in, that depth of knowledge with the recruiter doesn't exist. And suddenly that candidate's kind of going, I'm not, you know, so far it's been good. They've been very proactive and responsive, but I haven't, you know, from that screening interview, I haven't gotten that much detail. I'm not sure what I'm getting into here. It makes me a bit nervous because the recruiter couldn't explain it to me. So our key drivers really kind of prioritizes, these are the areas you need to look at and focus on.
Amazing. And yeah, well, that's pretty clean. So that's a lot of data coming at us. So here you're saying already how to somehow correlate the importance on the performance, but there are so many data coming at us. So how could I know, you know, if there are some specific population that I need to focus on because of the role, because of the country, you know, how could Qualtrics help me understand where to focus,
Yeah, so we
I've
can.
seen what to focus on. I've not seen where to focus on.
Sure. So, you know, what we have up here then is that ability to sort of break down, say, like, are those individuals coming from an agency? So, prime example would be, you get, you know, you hear in your verbatims, oh, I'm coming in via the agency, let's say Acme or whatever, and the experience is not so good. So as you drill down, then you can actually start to figure out, okay, with this particular agency, we have a lot of issues, right? So we've talked about the career portal, but we also need to look at other sources and individuals. So you will start to break it out by your different sources of where candidates are coming through. And we often see sometimes with different agencies that they have completely missold the candidate about the role, et cetera, what they're trying to do and so forth. So you have that ability to filter into it and really understand, look, let's look at all of our sources individually to kind of say, do we need to make tweaks in certain places?
Amazing. Yes, so let's look at the next stage.
Yeah, so the interview one is obviously, you know, you've gone through screening, you're in the meat of things, you're going through those interviews, and it's a high risk time in the sense of you invest a lot of time and money into it, a lot of people and resources. But on the flip side, then it is the most riskiest in terms of as those candidates start to go through that process, and if they start to have poor experience, that's more often than not when they're going to withdraw from the process. So what you're trying to understand is, when we look at that experience, what are the reasons why we may be losing candidates? Why are they withdrawing? You know, and is it by certain countries? Is it by certain roles? You know, etc. And really start to break that down. Then is like, let's look at 3 different types of candidates. 1, that are progressing through it. 2, candidates that we have rejected, and 3, the worst type is, you know, candidates we want but they are withdrawing, and why are they withdrawing? You know, so we can start to look at saying, look, we're losing a lot of senior managers and executives. Let's understand, you know, what's critical for them. So I'm going to say executives and senior managers, you know, and then we start to see things like, you know, timeliness can be a huge issue, that we're just not being responsive enough with these candidates. So straight up, we kind of go, we need to be more proactive when we're dealing with higher level individuals that are maybe our normal SLAs of responding within 4 or 5 days. We actually need to shorten that down for these managers more senior executives to maybe 2 days, because they're, you know, they're expecting quicker responses. They're expecting more timeliness.
Amazing. So is there a way to know, you know, by category for another stage, get into the details and understand, you know, whether it's more sales or it's more service support or it's more, you know, understanding, you know, where, you know, different roles, am I having, you know, different type of performance by the role?
Yeah. So with Qualtrics, you know, whatever data you have can be brought over. So however you classify your candidates, by their levels, their roles, their departments, their country, pay grades, whatever, you can bring all of that in, and then you can kind of make sense of that to figure out, okay, how do we want to look and analyze that data? So in this example, we're talking about role types. We could also start to talk about it by country. Whatever you've got can be that mechanism to start to break it out and so forth.
So what is interesting, Shane, is I believe that all those data could actually flow directly from your hiring systems, your ATS. So specifically, for instance, if you have SuccessFactors recruitment, all those data could come natively from SuccessFactors recruitment into Qualtrics. And also we could have not only the demographics of the candidates, but we could also have updates about the stage they are in, so that all those data updates, that is a massive hurdle potentially, is actually not a problem when you have that type of integration, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, very much, Eric. It's sort of a very low touch automated solution. So whatever your ATS is, be it SuccessFactors, Greenhouse, Workday, whatever, in the background, every day there's information coming over to us. Who are the candidates? What's their demographics? What stage they're at? And then we see, let's talk about John. John has just completed the screening interview. Straight away, that comes over. We go, all right, let's send John the survey about the screening experience. And we might have another individual who's just gone through the interviews, and we go and trigger that. So all of this is happening automatically in the background. We're not asking people to come in and upload lists of candidates and send out surveys. It just happens automatically. And as that results come in, it automatically flows into the dashboard. So every time you look at your dashboard, it is up to date. It is the latest information you're looking at.
Wonderful. For a matter of interest, we've been focusing on getting the feedback from the candidates, but we can also get the feedback from the hiring manager, which means that we can then look at what is the feedback from the hiring managers, what the feedback from the candidate, and see whether there are anything that we should be actually correlating in order to have a bigger impact. So that is about focusing on the candidate. Now we've been good. We've been to the offering stage. And obviously, we could have automated a number of things. We'll speak about that later. But let's speak about going to the onboarding. So we've offered John the job. He's getting in. So how can we look at the onboarding and see how things are going on the onboarding, on the side of the onboarding?
Sure. Yeah. So when we start to look at onboarding, you've got all of these different candidates just come in, different profiles, different places, different experiences. So, where we kind of start to understand is from 4 different angles. What's the experience like so far of being with your manager, in terms of your manager supporting you, helping you with issues, career conversations, the role itself. Do you have clarity on the role, what you need to do that role? Your team, which we kind of talked about earlier. Are you settling into that environment? Are you working well with your team? Are you collaborating? Do you know the purpose of your team? And obviously the last one, the most obvious one is the training itself as well. Is that training fit for purpose? Is it setting you up for success? More important, is it setting you up for independence? That you can actually go and hit your role as soon as you get out of the onboarding phase.
All right. So we have different drivers below, right?
Exactly. So these are kind of the main areas we focus on, and then within each of those, then we can start to go deep. What's critical though is when you start to think about all of the data you're flowing in, right? Where do you look at first? Because there's so many different profiles of employees that you've just hired. The job function, the location, the levels, the experience. Are they working from home? Are they customer facing, et cetera, et cetera? So this is a great way that we start to visualize all of those demographics in one place. And we start to understand, kind of going like, where are the outliers? So what's the onboarding experience like in the marketing department? The satisfaction is quite high at 89%. HR, IT is at 90%. Customer facing, work location, in the office, those are at home. Is onboarding differ for those? But you can start to see then some of your outliers, like we might have in Australia. The experience of onboarding is quite low. It is definitely an outlier. So it's a bit of a problematic area. So now we kind of have a sense of, a particular area to start to dig into. We can just simply drill down into that, and we start to look at Australia. And when we start to look at Australia, Now we kind of start to see, look, it's individuals who are coming through on the sales, who are customer facing, et cetera, et cetera. So we now start to narrow down and saying, okay, where we need to tweak our onboarding improvement program to make improvements, where we should start to focus first is around Australia. Where you kind of want to know then is like, what exactly should we do for those employees who are based in Australia? And that's where the system, you know, where we talk about AI and intelligence and surfacing up, you know, the right areas to focus on. So here what we have is focus areas. So for each of those profiles we start to look at, the system in the background does a lot of heavy calculations, you know, correlations and statistical analysis to determine, you know, for this subset of employees, here is your biggest opportunities for actually driving and making improvements on that onboarding experience. So rather than just looking at like bar charts and say which is the lowest, we actually let the system do all the heavy lifting calculation in the background and tell us, okay, for this profile employee, those in Australia, there's two sort of areas around the manager aspect. You know, the managers being effective at resolving work issues, and then also making sure that the career conversations are useful. Sometimes you'll have career conversations, but it doesn't feel like there's any, you know, context to it or any path to sort of get there. So, you know, these are two areas that we, you know, where we're starting to see for those Australian employees where we can be most effective at improving onboarding.
So that means that we can actually make that very pervasive, because there are so many, you know, cut on all this data that HR cannot actually, you know, do, you know, all those different slice and dice cut and then go and engage with every manager to talk to them about it. So what you're showing here in a way would be a way to actually provide this dashboard to every line manager or higher line manager, on them to be able to immediately see in their environment how they're performing, but also the system telling them where should be focusing. So that's a great way to potentially have to change the managerial behavior, to have them much more targeted, much more data driven. And obviously HR the key role to actually empower the managers with those tools. But obviously HR would not be able to scale to all those departments, all those managers, you know, sometimes it's thousands. With that, you have a way to provide them the support they need, with, you know, without having them to become data scientists in a way.
Yeah, it happens from two sides. We can give dashboards out to managers and they can see stuff, but we're also giving dashboards to the central team to be able to drill into it. And what's critical is that you don't. We want to be, when our organizations act on the results, we want to be very precise on what they act on. So to give that or bring it to life is, you know, we've talked about managers in Australia, but even that is a little bit ambiguous. Like, who are those managers specifically? You know, so since we know all of the new hires and we know their associated managers, you know, we can detail and list all of these managers. So when we start to drill down into that, you know, we say, well, who are the managers in Australia that we need to kind of give a bit of guidance and help to? Very easy for the system then to say, well, who are the ones that are maybe need a bit of help around helping their new hires with resolving work issues or having better career conversations. So Jacqueline here, you know, and Justin and Matthew and so forth. So rather than kind of saying, oh, we need to have a big, huge, massive change to all managers and what they do in onboarding for Australia, we're kind of saying, actually, you know what, we just need to sit with Jacqueline, Justin, and Matthew and just do a very precise workshop for them around these particular areas. So yeah, but way more effective because we're getting down to just the exact problem, and it's less distracting for the rest of the business and the managers that don't need it because they are good at, like Anna and so forth.
So on very much, you know, this is not about finger pointing those managers like say Jacqueline or Justin, but it's about understanding how we can help them. So perhaps it'd be great if we could use, and that's what we can with Qualtrics, is create, you know, suggest the manager to have a meeting with those managers or perhaps a few others, the best performer on the less best performers, so to say, so that we can create, an ideation session where we have them thinking together about, how to help them to overcome some of the challenges, like how can I help the employees faster in a way. And that's what the ID board provided by Qualtrics help. A way to actually have the people to discuss, create an action plan, commit to an action plan, vote for the most relevant action plan for their context. And that's what Qualtrics is providing here, which is very action targeted, data driven, action oriented. And then obviously central HR can look at, whether those action plans have been designed, engaged, committed, delivered. And at a later stage to go back to the dashboard and see whether when those actions have been taken and delivered, there is an actual benefits for the employees being onboarding, and therefore for the performance of the manager in their job, which is really, really good.
Yeah, I think that's
lovely. So
that's absolutely critical, Eric. This is not a platform to be finger pointing and calling out people's flaws. Like when you talk to some of the managers like Jacqueline and Justin, they may have very genuine reasons why this has not happened. But to your point, right, you can leverage where it's working well. So if we talk about Anna in this example, what are her ideas? What does she do? That's different potentially. That can be shared with Jacqueline and Justin. So you create those idea boards and workshops to really just share ideas and experiences to go and help those managers.
Wonderful. So just being careful about time and have time for the closeout. What else would you like to share about onboarding? So obviously we understand that all those data are coming in a way in this dashboard for consumption of the managers and having them being able to engage in action. Any other things you would like to share?
Yeah, I think what's also is like, with Qualtrics, you can measure all of these experiences, and we do a lot of other stuff as well. But one of the things we always want to understand, like, really, why is it important to have a good onboarding experience? Because further down the line, maybe after 6 months, where we're doing our engagement and pulse surveys, we want to understand, does that onboarding experience have an impact on their engagement? And with Qualtrics, you can start to join those data sets together to really understand, actually, those that have poor onboarding, we can actually see a correlation now to having poor engagement. And we know with poor engagement, that's a path towards, attrition and people leaving the organization. So being able to connect and join the dots to understand how this can actually influence engagement is absolutely critical as well. So we're not doing onboarding and an amazing onboarding program and leaving it in isolation, but we are starting to understand, the consequences of a poor onboarding experience. So, example, those in Australia are having poor onboarding, are also having poor engagement. And then we start to look into those and say, well, what are the items from onboarding statistically that have that really big impact on the individual's engagement? And again, those items we found about the manager and where there was an opportunity to make improvement, we can see consequently as well, and statistically, that has actually impacted those individuals' engagement. And we know from that then that is going to start to be, poor engagement going to be a prediction of attrition.
Amazing. So that's a great way to close the demonstration by opening it up to another key element, which is obviously engagement. Because as you said, if we've done a good job at onboarding people and we have them being very positive over 6 months, the statistics, and we could see that with Qualtrics, is that for those who are ending up the onboarding period on a positive high, they are likely to have a higher level of engagement and therefore having a longer, more successful career with the company for the benefit of the company. So thank you very much. So if you would like to make me a presenter, I could actually share a few additional data, wrap up and then share a few data that will help people on the webinar here to understand about how to build a business case or how to think about building a business case for that element. So can you see my screen all right?
Can do, Eric. Yeah, I'm seeing how to attract the best candidates.
And now you can see my slide.
I think I'm seeing the landing page for the webinar itself.
Okay, stay with me. Have you made me presenter?
I have done, yeah. Let me just check again. Let me try again, make presenter.
Show my screen.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. You're up now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your patience. So what we've seen is Qualtrics platform very much more than a survey platform or reporting platform. We've seen with Shane that we can actually listen in very different ways, and we use the candidate experience use case, having this intercept so that when people actually are, for instance, on your career webpage, you can actually catch their feedback. But you can obviously send a survey by email. You can do many ways to actually get the feedback from the candidates and from your onboardee to actually understand and remember what they say all along during the process of hiring and onboarding. We've seen the dashboard, and we've seen that this is much more about than reporting. This is a lot of statistics. That is a lot of pre-built statistics, pre-built sentiment analysis that will help you fast track the implementation of candidate and onboarding experience. And we have spoken about how to drive that in a way to have a culture of action on having a data-driven culture, which is about the Xflow, on the opportunity to actually have automated workflows generated from the results of the candidate on the onboarding feedback, such as creating a workflow that will actually ping people on their channel in Microsoft Teams, open a ticket in your service desk, or actually send an email for having people to actually take an action. All that can be very fast, very smooth, and very effective if properly integrated with your HRIS. So that is why we're actually highlighting here the example with SuccessFactors, and I bet that some of you are SuccessFactors customers. There are native integrations between Qualtrics and SuccessFactors. One of them is about the data. Therefore, we can source the data from SuccessFactors Recruitment, from SuccessFactors Employee Central, into Qualtrics automatically, and not only get the demographics, but also the stage, the status of the candidate or the employee, and actually then drive and integrate with action and workflows process on SuccessFactors to trigger the right moment of listening from Qualtrics. And that is part of the roadmap of SuccessFactors being actually the new one being in H1 in May. So if I look at that, we've spoken about employee lifecycle, we've spoken about candidate experience lifecycle, we focus on candidate and onboarding, on training, but you can see that there are many other moments in the life of the employee that you can expand with the same technology, with the same platform of Qualtrics, so that you can have a full view. We have seen that you can relate all those elements to your engagement and pulsing moments, and see whether there is a correlation between how the people feel and live during the different moments in the company with how they overall grade their level of engagement in the company. Obviously, that goes along other mechanisms of employee experience. So it's a very comprehensive set of things that you can go do with the Qualtrics employee platform. And the thing that we want to share here is that starting with candidate and onboarding is pretty neat to actually pave your way for a much broader approach of employee experience. Or if you are already with engagement and pulse, it's a very easy way to expand from your, I would say, more standard classical academic way to gauge engagement and pulsing and get into the moment of the employee with candidate and lifecycle. So return experience is very much focusing on, yes, it's about being people-centric. It's about actually looking about how this is, business performance. It's about targeting, because you have a vast amount of roles, organization, departments, managers. So where to focus is very key. It's about automation, because HR cannot be everywhere. So that's a great way to actually help HR, help the managers, and drive to different type of manager behavior. And one of them is starting by being data driven. And you have seen that with the platform, you can actually drive that behavior of being data driven by providing them with a level of support on artificial intelligence that will not require them to become data scientists, which is not the core of their job for most of them. So just a few numbers to actually see if they're meet to actually build a business case. And we strongly believe that yes. So given the time, I will not go into the details, but think about you having a 200 people hiring plan, which for a large scale company is not much, if only you take into account managing attrition. And that turns in terms of calculating what your hiring plan costs like. On take 10, 15, 20%. In some of all the organization I know, it's about 30% of the annual base salary. It turns out to be quite a big number. To achieve 200 people hired, you need to have a high number of applications. And the data shows from statistics that a fairly large number of them will report a bad employee experience. And look at Glassdoor. And those people speak to a lot of people. That makes an additional number of detractors for the company, which actually will generate a fairly large number of in the talent pool having bad perception of the company, even if you have not spoken to them. So there's a few questions, a few tests that you can look at, which is about, how much feedback do you get from the shortlisted candidate not hired? And that will tell us about, the fact that you're getting feedback that are BAs or not, because obviously people being hired will always give you a good feedback of their hiring process. Perhaps not so much for those who've been shortlisted and not hired. And how many people are you hiring from your talent pool? And if you go to the onboarding, same thing, same plan. Look about what the productivity ramp up. Look about the percentage of people who are looking to stay in the company after the first 6 months. The percentage of the people who will look at staying in the company after the first 12 months, and all that sum up into a fairly large number. What I want to share with you here is that not so much that those numbers are absolutely accurate. What I want to share with you is that there are actually numbers on the market data that could help you figure out whether there is a business case for you to engage on building a candidate experience, an onboarding experience program. So obviously at that stage, you wonder, how big is that program? How intense is it for you to actually go start do that? So the good news is that with Qualtrics, you get the technology and the practices, and hopefully that demonstration helps you being confident with it. That a lot of it is coming out of the box with the system, with the solution for candidate and for the new employee onboarding. Along with that, because we are AKT Global, accredited and certified, we can actually very much commit on having you getting after the first 12 weeks the first benefits from the platform. So it's pretty fast, 12 weeks, like less than 3 months, you start to get data out of the system and you can do something with it. And obviously you wonder about how much of IS and HR. Our experience with customers last year, this year, that the amount of investment of IS and HR resources on these type of programs are in hours, not in days, and certainly not in weeks. So it's fairly light touch when it comes to the involvement of IS and HR in order to get the platform up so that you are ready to actually work with it and start to make some continuous improvement programs. So just being sharp on the time, hopefully you get the feeling through that webinar that together we could actually really work on assessing what's your current state on these 2 use cases, candidate and onboarding experience. We could work together on looking at what is the opportunity for you to improve. And obviously, we have triggered the interest, the appetite for you to have a meeting soon scheduled so that we can answer all the questions that you got during that webinar, further deep dive on the demonstration, and hopefully start to actually look at how to size and shape an opportunity of a program together in your company. Thank you very much for attending that webinar. Looking forward to speaking together very soon. Thank you, Shane, for being on that program with us. And we'll get back soon. Thank you. Goodbye.